Hello and welcome to Path to Power, episode 19. I'm Matt Cooper.
And I'm Ivan Yates.
And we have a bundle of things to get through on today's podcast. We will be talking about what happened in the UK elections. We'll be making big predictions in relation to who's going to win the seats in the European Parliament elections now that we know the identities of all of the candidates. Ivan is going back to his hobby horse of infrastructure and planning and judicial reviews. We're going to talk a little bit about China. And we're going to start, though, with the humiliating week that it has been for the government in relation to dealing with the immigration issues. Because Ivan, bad and all as it was last week when we were talking about Helen McEntee and her humiliating performance in front of Michael McNamara at the Oireachtas Committee, it all got worse ever since that. It has been extraordinary to witness how, incredibly, this government has managed to put itself on the back foot against the British government when it comes to Rwanda and immigration. How the hell did they manage to get it so badly wrong?
Well, someone texted me an expression I hadn't heard before. FUBAR, FUBAR.
Explain
No, I was going to ask you to explain it because I thought you'd know it. Apparently, it's fucked up beyond all recognition. and that's how they describe it. I actually thought about that. Is that fair? Yeah, it's accurate.
Yeah, it's fair. Because let's take through the sequence of this, because I think this is quite extraordinary, so that people can say why we're describing this as humiliating. So you had a situation where Helen McEntee is unable to answer various questions, but she did make one big claim, which may or may not be accurate, but that over 80% of the people applying for international protection here in Ireland now are coming over the border, having previously been in the UK. They come over to Northern Ireland and they come down south. And then Micheál Martin uses that to say that this is a result of the Rwanda decision in the UK, the legislation that went through last week, where they will seek to deport people who come in without documentation to Rwanda, where they will be processed and where they will be kept off English soil. So he then said that, and that was seized upon by the British media and by the British government. And then the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, cancels a meeting with Helen McEntee on Monday, which is bad enough. Micheál Martin goes to the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference, and he effectively slaps down Helen McEntee. And he says there's no basis to this claim of over 80%. She tries to hold to it. Then Simon Harris wades in to try and defend his minister. Then he starts making comments about we're not getting caught up in internal British politics. But the British see an opportunity. I mean, they're having great fun with this. They're claiming this means their Rwanda policy is working. And then they start saying things like, well, you don't want us closing the border, do you? And Simon Harris announces 100 Gardaí to go to the border. Except when Rishi Sunak stands up to a smirking Ian Paisley inside the House of Commons saying, oh, this is dreadful, we couldn't have that. Then Simon Harris says, oh, no, those Gardaí aren't going to the border at all. And there's more. I mean, what can you say about this?
Well, first of all, to try and unpick it, and I will fast forward to the politics of this, the figures that Helen McEntee is relying on is that 10,330 people have presented to the IPAS office seeking asylum. And at the ports, over the same period, they only have registered 2,857. And that gives you your 80-20 sort of split, because the rest that weren't part of the 2,857 clearly came in through another route other than the seaport. Now, put it like this. What it actually reveals is that the processing of numbers, as well as the deportation, which was the point that Michael McNamara was making, is just not fit for purpose, that the department don't have proper statistics. And what the whole
don't have proper processes to do the job they're supposed to be doing.
But they don't even have the numbers, right? And they don't even have proper checking at any point to verify anything. Like, there seems to be no liaison with Belfast, because there's only so many ways you can get into Northern Ireland, either through the airport or seaport, and there seems to be no relationship there. She also referred to this agreement that was in place, and that was another fiasco, because they're not prepared to publish the agreement, and they said that it wasn't a sort of treaty or legal agreement.
This is actually worse, right? This was an agreement post-Brexit in 2020 that basically each country would take back people. If they sort of left the UK to come to Ireland or left Ireland to go to the UK to make an application, the countries would take them back and process them in the first place of landing. And this was knocked down in the most remarkable circumstances recently. A High Court decision, 2 refugees took an action to stop them themselves being deported to the United Kingdom, saying the United Kingdom is not a safe country because we might get sent to Rwanda. Now, the Irish Daily Mail this week managed to report that one of those two individuals was a registered sex offender in the UK.
This is the Iraqi gentleman, right? which and wasn't transposed onto the Irish sex offenders register
for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then, not only that, the British actually offered to take him back in October 2021 to deal with him there. It didn't get onto the Helen McEntee's desk for another 9 months. It was only then that they were going to actually send him back. And then he took.
So you're coming around to FUBAR, are you? As regards that department.
Well, that is damning of that way that department operates.
Can I talk about
but sorry, no, can I just finish the point? This is the politics of it. Yeah. You know, then you have Simon Harris saying, we don't break our international agreements. We don't play politics with them. But you have an international agreement in place which applies to a sex offender and you actually don't actually send the person back. So how can you be boasting about, piously about our international agreements when you don't actually enforce them?
When I say politics, I mean the electoral politics of this. So where I'm sort of slowly coming up the view, like, as you know, on this podcast, I've been puzzled. Why is Fianna Fáil on 16%. So a poll came out in the Business Post, your paper, last Sunday, saying they were on 14%. Now, sorry, remember this. 2011, the worst nadir of Fianna Fáil, Troika, bank crash, property crash, every type of business crash. They got 17.4% in 2011 and they got 20 seats. Now they're rating quite a bit below that. And I'm actually coming to the conclusion, because we're going to talk about the European elections. I actually think the politics of this, and I want to talk about the politics of the latest atrocity, which is not only everything you said, but we have Newtown Mount Kennedy. And I just wanted to say this because I happened to be, I do a coastal walk a little bit at a time, 70 kilometres in Wexford, when I start around now. And I was driving to Curracloe in my car and I listened to the Brendan O'Connor show. And they had a panel. Every one of the 4 members were either NGO, journalists or academics, which would be sort of pro-migration. Right, you know, the usual. And they didn't have one person on it with any counter view. So I was expecting, because I heard whatever there had been about the riot squad in Newtown Mount Kennedy, that there was going to be a big march. Now, remember this. Like, I have contacts in Wicklow. Every one of the arrests were local people. They were not Dublin people. Their address was given. I'm told there was over 2,000 people there, and they were predominantly local people. The point I'm making is this. When I flicked on the 6 and 9 o'clock news, there was no reference whatsoever to any march in Newtown. And actually, there's a breaking story with Ockram, which is a Lawless's Hotel and different things there in terms of further protests. But the point I'm making is this. I am coming to the view that the European elections is actually going to be a referendum on migration, irrespective of the work of MEPs, their track record, or any other issue. And it's simply down to this litmus test. Do you want to stop these people coming or not?
Okay, there's a number of things. I'm going to borrow your pen because I want to keep notes as to the things I need to get back to, right? Just on the Newtown Mount Kennedy, Sky News did a really interesting piece yesterday, and it's interesting this came from outside of Ireland. They've done an analysis of the social media coverage of Newtown Mount Kennedy and also phrases like Ireland is full. And they've discovered that 60% of these are coming from the United States of America. That this is being whipped up from outside of Ireland, that the actual Irish-generated content in relation to this is only about 20%. And the most inflammatory stuff is, it would seem like a pretty sinister propaganda campaign from outside the country. So that's the first thing. Now, on the opinion polls, I would put a gamble now with you, right? And you know I don't often bet with you, but I suspect that the figures for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael when it comes to the general election will be entirely different. Okay. I suspect Fianna Fáil will do better than Fine Gael.
In the general election?
In the general election.
But in the Euros?
Don't mind the Euros for a minute. Okay. Let's just talk about the general election, the election that really matters.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen here is Fine Gael might have a higher percentage opinion poll rating, but it's going to suffer in individual constituencies because of all the individual TDs stepping down and the name recognition. And that actually the Fianna Fáil brand will probably, an organisation at constituency levels will probably mean they'll do better and Fine Gael may not do as well. So those positions may well be reversed. Also in relation to the European Parliament elections and the local elections, I agree with you. I think immigration is going to be a very, very big factor. I think a lot of independent candidates for the councils will play big time upon that as well. There won't be as big a turnout as you get for a general election. It would also be an opportunity for people to kick the government in a way they may not necessarily do at a general election because they're thinking differently. So I think the local elections could be an absolute disaster for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens. Could be very, very good for Sinn Féin, but could be even much better for the independents.
So where I'm coming to, because I'm particularly puzzled, Fine Gael sort of held their own at 21%. They didn't get that different, 22% in the general election. It's the Fianna Fáil thing that has just completely foxed me. So what I'm saying is this. I think the Fianna Fáil supporter is slightly more blue-collar and slightly older. And these are the people who most resent free medical cards, free houses, free travel for these migrants. And they are perhaps the sort of silent majority. So what I call the politics of late atrocity, which is you have neatly summarised in terms of all that's happened with McEntee and Harris and the Brits and so on. And the Iraqi thing would be thrown into that. But also Tent City has to be thrown into that. So I call that the politics of late atrocity. But the deeper issue is, and they're turning up in Bowles Bridge, God forbid they could appear in Ranelagh shortly. But
I don't live in Ranelagh. I know you say that to me in the way it looks and stuff.
I'm only joking.
I know that. As it actually happens, I have an international protection centre within 300 metres of where I live.
Okay.
I opened in the last couple of months, and it absolutely has caused no difficulty whatsoever in my local area.
And what do you make of Tent City?
Well, I think Simon Harris has made a big blunder by saying that they won't be allowed to come up anywhere else. Roderick O'Gorman apparently has warned them, look, that's fine. And they had to move it away from Mount Street. I can see the optics were appalling in relation to having this, and there was a degree of menace. But to promise that it won't develop anywhere else, and it's already starting to develop in St. Mary's Road down in Bowles Bridge, where the first 15 tents were pitched on Thursday evening. I think, again, he's leaving himself a hostage to fortune. And I think this is one of the big Simon Harris issues that I'd imagine they're looking at him pretty askance, not just within government, but within Fine Gael as well, is that he all bluster, and can he actually deliver on the stuff, that tough-talking stuff?
Well, put it like this, he maybe lives by the latest soundbite, but I am hearing that both Leo, this really got serious rubber hit the road after February 22. Leo came back into being Taoiseach in December 22. And actually over the last 2 years, what with Ukraine and now different surges of immigrants, not European, the word was that Leo and Micheál were a bit laissez-faire about this. Simon Harris, whatever he is, he's not laissez-faire about more migrants.
But I'm also wondering about, and I don't know if you've heard anything about this to give any information, but I wonder what the dynamic between the three party leaders is now. Because whatever about previous differences, Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin and Eamon Ryan established good working relationships.
Yeah.
So Leo Varadkar goes, and suddenly the youngest member, one of the youngest members of Cabinet.
The youngest member of the Fine Gael Parliamentary Party.
Okay, the youngest fella is made their boss.
Yeah.
Right? This guy who didn't have a stellar performance in the Department of Health, who was Minister for Further and Higher Education, which is almost like a super junior role in Cabinet to an extent. Mm-hmm. And suddenly he gets moved from the bottom of the table up to the top of the table. I wonder how Ryan and Martin, with all their experience, look at him and go, really?
Well, I think two other things they'd add. Say, all right, I'm in my mid-60s now. Is this where politics is going? I think they'd be looking at their own sell-by date. When are my party going to be saying, it's time for us to have a succession plan?
Unless their party say, Jesus, this idea of putting the young fella in charge isn't working out too well.
But sorry,
maybe we need the more experienced
other vital
people.
factor in that is circumstance. Look, the maximum this is going to run is less than 6 months. Everything has now been viewed about by-elections and so on. So the truth of it is, even if they had an angelic, amicable relationship and were totally supportive, the circumstances are they're heading for different lifeboats.
Well, indeed, and that's where I want to come to, where I might surprise you a little bit. But am I being a bit harsh maybe on Simon Harris's performance, that he hasn't necessarily impressed and dramatically, and he's been let down by. They also must be looking at him and saying, "Why did he appoint Helen McEntee, reappoint her to the Parliament Judge?" So that undermines.
But we said that
first.
before it happened.
Well, he did, yeah. But I mean, okay, he's not going to be like Liz Truss and the lettuce. Right,
no.
In that he is not under a threat, and he's not. I mean,
no, he's not as bad as her. In fairness, let's be fair.
And Helen McEntee isn't a Kwasi Kwarteng.
Well, no, sorry.
Anyway,
we haven't reached bottom with her yet.
All right, okay, right. But let me surprise you. I've finally come to the conclusion that you're correct about the election date.
Yeah.
Right?
Once it goes past the 5th of November, you don't care. If it's the 15th, once your All Blacks match is okay, once your Washington trip is okay, you're quite relaxed about the 15th of November.
15th is that, although it is Aileen's birthday, so I'll still have to bring her out that night.
I'm sorry, Matt, but you pushed this too far.
The point I'm about to make is that I haven't been thinking about all of this. And even if I still believe that Simon Harris will want to go to March, because human nature, he's possibly going to go down in history, not just as the youngest ever Taoiseach, but as the short and serving Taoiseach. And I'll tell you why I agree it's not going to happen. I've come round to your way of thinking. Yeah. They have to have something to go to the country on. So they have to have something about the budget. So there's no way around it.
And if you look at McGrath's perspective, he blew $2 billion at the Fianna Fáil Ardèche, and they went down 2% in the polls. I mean, 2,000 personal credit. We went through the USC and all the changes at point you'd hit the higher rate of tax, and Fianna Fáil go down. They must, as strategists, be saying, and that's why I'm saying Fianna Fáil have to radically do. If I was a Fianna Fáil strategist, and I'm not, I would be saying, you know what, we should get a week out of toying with the idea that we might go for the Rwanda deal, just to show on this litmus test of being anti-immigrant we're in the right place.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, that is going far, I admit that.
But the funny thing about it is, even the Rwanda thing is just pure bullshit, and I'll explain why. Do you know how many net migrants went into the UK last year? How many additional...
Post-Brexit, yeah.
Oh, and I'll get to that point secondly. Yeah. But guess how much their population increased because of migration last year?
It's obviously a low figure.
No,
it's a high figure. I have no idea.
1.2 million people.
That is a lot.
That's a lot, right? In America... Because
you hear these stories that fruit pickers and so on aren't available for horticultural crops.
Sorry, do you know the number of migrants into the UK has gone up fourfold since Brexit? So far from take back control and getting control of their borders.
With these legal, they got visas.
It's a combination of it. But far from taking back control, they've lost control of the borders. Hence, they want to try and make a big thing out of stopping the boats sailing across the English Channel. But they've lost the cooperation of the French, who were stopping people from coming across. This is what the exit from the EU has done to them, right? So then they come up with this utterly cynical plan to say that Rwanda is a suitable... I mean, anyone with any knowledge of what the last decade of the last 20th century would know about the savagery of Rwanda and the civil war there. And this is not a country...
Let's be clear. There is within the EU this policy option, of which Rwanda is a bad example of what's called externalization.
Yes.
You could pick Algeria, you could pick Egypt or whatever. We are going
not picking great examples.
The point is this. We'll pick a country and we will do a deal to pay them to take our migrants and so on. So that's called externalization. So word like this, I think the politician who dabbles with a little bit, like drugs, dabbles in externalization is going to get votes. But my point is this. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have to urgently, there's a polling in 4 or 5 weeks. They're facing carnage all over the country. Fianna Fáil got 28% in 2019 and got 267 councillors. If they're anywhere near, and I actually don't believe it's possible they're on 14% because of their strength of candidates and local organisation. But if that's the case, the only thing they can do is a complete reset on migration.
Okay, actually, before we take a break, why don't we just have a look at who has been nominated in the 3 constituencies for the European Parliament elections? I mean, my God, the number of candidates who are going. But who's going to actually get the seats? Why don't we just have a look at Dublin at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Where you have most of the parties running only a single candidate, with the exception of Sinn Féin, who are running 2, Lynn Boylan and Daithí Doolan. And would it be fair to surmise that Lynn Boylan, who surprisingly lost her seat in 2019 after being a quite impressive MEP, is going to top the poll and she will walk back into the European Parliament?
Yeah, so I think you have a figure of 23 candidates for Ireland South and Dublin, and 28 for the huge constituency of Dublin Northwest. I think it's between 6 for Dublin. We'll just focus. I think the 4 will come from these 6. Either Lynn Boylan, Kieran Cuff, Barry Andrews or Regina Doherty, Niall Boylan or Claire Daly.
You're putting Niall Boylan in the top 6.
Oh, I am indeed. Yeah, I am indeed. Notwithstanding that you'd see someone did a lovely job. They dredged up all the Twitters put out by the producer of his talk show. And things like, we have on tomorrow's show someone who in Germany who wants to legalise having sex with his dog, and someone else who it's National Pinch Your Bum Day. Should this be a crime or not? In other words, like quite outrageous positions. And he came back with a good rejoinder, which is just because something isn't in the paper doesn't mean, the journalist believes on the side of a particular story. But put it like this. I think he's in a perfect position. Hold
on a second now. I mean, there are others there. I mean, Malachy Steenson is not going to get elected, but he could get a lot of that Boylan vote. He's been very active down the East Wall and the anti-immigrant stuff. He's a former Workers' Party guy. He's been around quite a few years.
In my opinion.
I know he won't get elected. I'm not suggesting he'll get elected.
Dahi Doolan won't get elected.
But sorry, there's a lot of people that'll start taking votes on that thing. There's a lot of sort of Irish Freedom Party, Irish First type candidates and stuff again. Breed Smith.
I'm put it like this: the bookies have her at 50-1.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't have her at 50-1, but I would say that she's going to struggle. There is a proliferation. I think Aon O'Riordan won't make it.
A chance.
I think Sinead Gibney won't make it. I think there's a load of Dr. Umar Al-Kadri, Stephen O'Rourke, Robin Cafola, Conor Murphy, Eamon Murphy. They won't make it.
Yeah, they won't. So, but then talk to me a little bit about, and we'll deal with this carefully, Claire Daly, because herself and Mick Wallace have featured a lot in coverage, particularly from the Irish Times, about their positions that they've taken in the European Parliament, and that they seem to be much more sympathetic to Russia than nearly anybody else.
The track record
will that play, do you think, in this election?
I think for her and Mick Wallace, the issue is Claire who and Mick who, insofar as they're just not as high profile. In fact, the only thing they have a profile is being sort of supportive in some way of Putin, allegedly. So the point I'm making there is this, that I think a shiny new penny in terms of a TD, like when we get on, I think someone like Michael McNamara, who's a sitting TD, has a better chance of being more visible than someone like Mick Wallace, who they say, I remember him years ago, he's involved in soccer and he was a TD in Wexford. So I actually think Claire Daly, I can't put my finger on this, but my feeling of it is that the middle class vote, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, won't elect 2. And so therefore I'm saying 3 left of centre. One of them's gone to Lynn Boylan. And put it like this, I find it hard.
But are you saying 3 left of centre and yet you're still saying Niall Boylan might win a seat?
Well, sorry, I mean kind of non-establishment.
Non-centrist.
Non-establishment, yeah. And I think he you see, the other thing is that Regina is originally from East Meath. Fianna Fáil.
No, she's a dub. She's a dub who moved out.
Oh, it's okay. I'll take that. But the point is, she didn't have a Dublin Dáil constituency at any stage. The Fianna Fáil rating in Dublin is 11%, which is not enough. It's below the national average of 14%, but that's not enough to secure him a seat. But I'm saying that preferences between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil will elect one or the other. So who is going to be ahead? That is a real problem for Fianna Fáil. And then you have people who are in a different market. Now, Kieran Cuff, could get a middle-class vote. He was a former minister. He has a profile. He's worked hard as an MEP. But at the same time, the tide has gone out on the Greens. They've gone, say, basically from 15% in Dublin to 6% in Dublin. So, to be honest with you, the best I can do for you is to nail it down to 6 at this stage. And those are the 6.
Okay. Let's look at Midlands Northwest. Did Peter Casey actually go for a nomination in the end?
Peter sent me a text. He listens to the podcast every week, and he believed when I said that Helen McEntee would be dropped, as I predicted. She should have been dropped. And he wasn't going to. And then when he found, oh my God, she's still in justice, I'm going to stand. And he told me he was down on a snorkeling holiday for a honeymoon for his son. Is getting married, that he's not prepared. So I don't think his heart is really in it.
Did he actually lodge the nomination?
Well, Finian McGrath withdrew.
Yeah,
but put it like this, that he was a late entrant. It might have been out after that. But he told me he was standing.
Okay, Midlands Northwest, and his has perhaps a greater number of recognisable names, actually, than even in Dublin, because you have incumbents like Maria Walsh, you have an incumbent in Chris McManus, who wasn't elected the last time, but inherited the seat from Matt Carty, who might get one of 2 seats if Sinn Féin win 2 seats, but could be vulnerable to Michelle Gildernew if there's only 1 seat won by Sinn Féin, possibly.
Yeah.
You have Luke Flanagan looking to retain his seat. You have Barry Cowan, one of 3 Fianna Fáil efforts. You have him and Niall Blaney, and you have Flip-flopper Lisa Chambers. Right. You have Pater Tobin from Aintu.
I wasn't interjecting a pejorative insult. Carry on, yeah.
All the people who'll be telling Lisa Chambers, I'm voting for you, Lisa, I'm voting for you, and then they'll change their mind at the last minute. Okay. Pater Tobin, which I'm very surprised by, because if he was to win it, would he actually take it up and abandon the Dáil? I think that's bizarre. Then you have Pauline O'Reilly, the Green Party senator, who's going for it. Fine Gael, of course, as well as Maria Walsh, have Nina Carberry, who's gone in because one of their incumbents stood down, basically knowing that the Fine Gael machine wasn't going to be in behind him. And then you have, after that, you have Kieran Mullooly, the RTE candidate. Yeah. Sorry, the former RTE candidate.
I'm calling for 6. I think Luke...
there are a couple of other names.
Yes, okay. But I'm dismissing anyone else.
Yeah, from the fringes, we have the likes of Herman Kelly from Derry. You have John Waters in the courts this week in a libel action defending against Kitty Holland of the Irish Times. And you have James Reynolds of the National Party as well. And
it sounds like Britain's Got Talent, another no.
Yeah, and hasn't your man Barrett gone in as well? Then?
Yeah, and he's another no. Okay, so I'm saying the 6 out of 5. Luke Flanagan will get elected, in my opinion.
Okay.
Nina Carberry will get elected, and there'll only be 1 Fine Gael seat.
So she'll take Maria Walsh out?
Yeah, I think she will. I think geography is very much in her favour, and I'm hearing the right people in the party are backing her. I think Barry Cowan, despite Fianna Fáil running 3, will get elected. Now remember, this has been a spectacular constituency. They had enough votes in 2009 and 14 and 19 and didn't get a seat because they didn't manage the transfers. But now that was in a 4-seater, it's now a 5-seater. So I'm giving Barry a seat, Ming Flanagan, Nina Carberry, Chris McManus I'm giving a seat to, and I think the last seat is between Pater Tobin and, in no particular order, and Kieran Mullooly. And I actually think...
Michelle Gildernew?
I don't think Sinn Féin will get a 2nd seat.
Really?
Yeah, and I think Chris is stronger than... That's what my sources tell me. But the point about it is this. I think Pater Tobin will get elected.
Gee, he'd be a loss from the Dáil, wouldn't he?
He's not going to be a loss from the Dáil.
Why not?
Because he's going to do as Simon Coveney and others did. He's going to stand because he's going to say he's a flag bearer for Aintu, and that then his job is going to be to lead them in the door. And in all of this,
do you think will he nominate his alternative to take the MEP role while he stays in the door?
Absolutely, that's inevitable. But sorry, the point,
should that be allowed?
It's a Trojan horse. But I'm going to tell you something more sexy. In the South constituency, my sources are telling me that Billy Kelleher, who will get elected, might well be made the next EU commissioner, and Cynthia Ní Mhurchu might have a deal in that she'll take the seat.
But don't you have to nominate?
No, it's already your number 2, your running mate is, and where there's not, as in the case of Mairead McGuinness, where the 2 got elected, Maria and so on, you actually have a panel after that. Okay. But no, where you have a running mate, they are the next in line.
Billy Kelleher, EU commissioner?
That's what I'm hearing. It's a possibility. Cork, friendly with Meathal, doesn't cause a by-election, allows Cynthia Ní Mhurchu, who've been enticed in, to have a political career. I can see a few positives.
You don't see her winning one of the 5 seats?
No, Fianna Fáil won't get 2. Fine Gael won't get 2 either. So, the ones I'm saying, 7 out of 5. Billy Kelleher, Sean Kelly, Paul Gavin. I think it's 1 out of 2 between Paul Gavin in Limerick, a senator, or Kathleen Funchion. And I think Michael McNamara will get elected, and I think the last seat is between Grace O'Sullivan, the Greens, and Mick Wallace. So I'm saying 7 out of 5. And all the rest of the ones, because I'm sure you have a long list of no-hopers there as well.
So you're saying even your friend John Mullins is a non-hoper, is he?
Put it like this, I can't see him getting elected, but I do think he might be going in Cork East if he gets a good showing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Derek Bly gets on, the Ireland
Won't
first
make
guy.
it. I'll tell you who'll do better.
I want to see how many votes he gets because, he has been an agitator.
A little bit of a dark horse, a guy called Eddie Punch. He's the CEO of the cattle dry stock farmers, and he will get a farmer's vote. He's well respected in that, but he won't, I think, get elected. I think the dark horse is not Lorna Bogue, Mary Fitzpatrick, Kieran Reardon, Christopher Doyle, Graham DeBarra, Ewan McCarthy. It is Michael McNamara.
Okay.
I think Michael McNamara. I heard a poll was done and he was on 10%, which wouldn't be enough, but that was before the little Justice Committee escapade.
Which he did very well out of. Okay. What do you think we can learn out of what's happened in the UK elections overnight?
Well, first of all...
Sorry, the British local elections across England.
So first of all, two big things is, first of all, this will create the narrative for the general election. And the same will happen in Ireland. In other words, the impact and momentum out of this. So going into this election, there was about 1,000 Labour councillors and 1,000 Tory councillors. And I think it'll probably end up, the Tories will go down to 500 and Labour go up to 1,300, maybe 1,350. And the big thing, though, was if you look, Blackpool South by-election, right? 26% swing to Keir Starmer. One of the biggest in any by-election, absolutely sauntered in. And, it is a winner-take-all type of electoral system. The Tories were nearly beaten into third for the Reform Party. There was less than 100 votes in it. I would say that any notion that the red wall of Northern England that became a blue wall with Brexit, that's gone. That's gone. So I think the Tories are going to be because the SNP is going to go down. Their leader resigned this week. I think Labour will cannibalise the SNP in Scotland, which makes it a lot more winnable. The election, they only need something like half the percentage swing they need otherwise. They will also win the red wall back. So I'm saying 2 terms for Starmer looks really on.
Of course, it also emphasises the point you've made previously that, well, a couple of things that, when you're in power for as long as the Tories have been, a bit like Fine Gael here in Ireland, people just get tired of you, that's it. They want change, they want out. It also suggests that for all of the excitement amongst the Tory party and the likes who support them in the GB News and the Daily Express about Rwanda, the Rwanda thing, bill getting through, didn't matter a toss to the majority of voters.
Can I get on to really what I'm really exercised about?
Let me guess, you were at a construction industry conference.
Well, no, infrastructure, yes. It was slightly more sophisticated than just the main contractors and the builders. So I went out of here last week and I was speaking at this thing in what used to be the banking hall in the Westin Hotel, College Green Hotel. Yes. And who did they have me sitting beside? Because I really got hot on a topic of judicial reviews. Only the president of the High Court, David Barneville, was sitting beside me. And when I told him what I was going to say, he left early. But the point about it was he had to leave early anyway. But we both said we'd have a joke about that. Let me just tell you, because I actually spent 3 days working on this infrastructure summit. I've now come to the conclusion, and I know you're going to tell me, this is all in a book called Who Owns Ireland?
Who really owns Ireland? Exactly. Really, add the word in, will you?
Okay. So I want, this is a very serious point. I've come to the considered conclusion that we have a legal system in this country which is called a common law system. So if you offend me, or if I have a row with you, I can sue you, and it's a common law civil system. But then we have another thing called, and sorry, that's only one other country in Europe has that apparently. There's a common good, right? So we go through the whole planning system of Bord Planola, local development plans, and all of this stuff where the best planning brains in the country decide, yeah, we're going to go with this block of apartments. And then what happens is someone decides, for whatever reason, you know what? I'm going to object to this, and I'm going to spend 100 grand objecting to this, and I go to the court. They can successfully paralyse it for 2 years. So I gave you the example at Clonshock, whereby the court said the correspondence between On Bord Planola and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, that there should have been more rigorous correspondence. These know what the guys know what they're doing. By the time they got that correspondence right, they were out of permission and to go right back to the start. Clonliff, I've told you about. But I have 2 other juicy ones questions for you. So the Land Development Agency, remember that body? So they have plans to build on state land 67,000 houses. They're in train for 14,000. And in the 14,000 was a site called the Dundrum Mental Hospital. And they came up with beautiful architecture, brilliant plans for 950 units in that prime part of South Dublin. And you know what? They went through every process and they got planning permission. And then what happened? Someone decided, I'm going to go to the High Court and get a judicial review. And the whole thing is scuppered. Bus Connects, you will have heard about. So they've got 4 particular designs of routes through, and someone has decided they've sought leave to go to a judicial review over one bus stop. Over one bus stop, we're going to throw up a whole radial route. So my point to you is this. And so I've 4 examples there for you between Clonliffe, Clonshock, Dundrum and the bus stops to say this is not fit for purpose. When are we going to tell the judges to butt out?
How do we manage to get the country's motorway network built?
Because we had a system of CPOs.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay.
It's a rhetorical question.
Okay. So the situation is, and this new planning bill tries to develop UDZs, urban development zones, which will get over this. But the point is this: the judicial system is based on common law, which allows you to exercise your human right as an individual. My point is this: the public will, a housing crisis, the political will to do this is being completely set at naught by the judiciary. And who, in the name of heaven, are the judiciary accountable to?
Okay, but hold on a second now.
Am I wrong?
Well,
I'm rarely wrong. In fact, I'm never wrong, but I'm not always correct.
Okay. Anyway, the point I was going to make is that it's not the fault of the judges for interpreting the laws. It's the fault of the legislators for putting laws in place that allow judicial reviews to take place.
Sorry. We've decided that this is a particular area is a good idea to build as a community. We've decided not everyone can be happy with it. So the question is, does an individual have this right? So what I'm saying is that the courts have entertained, now leaving aside the whole thing, that, the costs, they award costs against the developer every time. And, I've told you about Hines and the 100 million and so on. But the point is this: what I learned from this conference this week is that unless we can deal with judicial reviews, all the stuff with deeper and spending reviews and infrastructure guidelines to hurry this up, even they've appointed 300 extra staff with Bord Planola, and they are dealing with the backlogs, but it doesn't deal with the last rock on the road, which is judicial reviews. Literally, can I give you another example? The North-South Interconnector. The North-South Interconnector, this guy, Michael Mann from Airgrid, said, we've these projects for 5 lines to replace lines in Dublin, we've this project for GridLink, and we've this project for offshore. But he said, make no mistake, if the North-South overground connector does not go ahead, the lights will go out. My question, Matt, is who is listening? Why aren't you writing this on the back page of the Sunday Business Post, that the lights are going to go out?
It's in my book. It actually, something else that I wrote about in Who Really Owns Ireland is the Chinese investment that's taking place in the country, the purchase of assets and the location of things. Because this is interesting, and there was quite a lot of commentary in newspapers last week. I saw the likes of Lucinda Creighton writing in the Business Post about it. That we take very little notice here in Ireland of the international trends which can be impactful upon us, and that the growing difficulties that many EU countries are having about their relationship with China, Germany in particular, the United States, are we going to have to pick a side in the row between US and China? Because as it happens, we are more exposed to China than nearly any other EU country per head of population, because we have major semiconductor exports and whatever to China. And then you look at China and you wonder, well, why have we been sucking up to China? Is it everything to do with money, that we're happy to have them come in buying up hotels, making investments into our universities, all the rest of it, when there's major civil rights issues in relation to China? The Uyghur people, for example, who are treated a bit like, shall we say, the Palestinians in that area, and yet why are we not exercised about that? Why do we not say, China, we don't want to deal with you?
Well, Listeners should know that Matt kindly sends me a trawl of relevant articles we might discuss. And he kindly sent me this week 2 articles that were penned by the aforesaid Matt Cooper. And our relationship with an increasingly dominant China demands scrutiny. And another one, and basically in this you argue about Chinese intelligence, about security cameras around the Dole, Huawei, TikTok, and all the rest of it. And I'm saying to myself, oh, sweet Jesus, this guy believes the world is in a particular place, whereas actually, in reality, we've had a discussion about immigrant. We abolished the most successful scheme, raising 1.25 billion into this company, into this country, the Immigrant Investor Programme, primarily Chinese, only a quarter of which ever turn up in Ireland. And it funded beautiful infrastructure in hospitals and universities and so on. Look, Matt, get a grip. 2 years ago, we sold 16 billion worth of goods, chips that you don't eat, microchips, pharma goods, infant formula, meat, and so on. It's gone down to 9.6 billion. We are the 5th largest exporting country in Europe to China. And you know what? This is feeding a lot of hungry Irish people. This is immigration you can believe in. They're tourism.
So
they're
park your principles and count the money, is it?
Not only park your principles, get over yourself and the world as it should be and the way the world that it is, and do business with a trading bloc. And you know what? If America has a problem with China, it's not our problem. And I think we should show a little bit of gratitude to the Chinese, a little bit of more bilateral thinking. And you put in your articles how Xi Jinping, or when he was in a lower job, was over here.
He was the vice president at the time. When he went,
exactly.
And he used a Hurley in Croke Park.
Some of the language you use about we need to get a grip and the distrust and the naivety and all these things.
Are you complaining about the use?
Upsetting, to be honest with you.
Upsetting. You got upset. No, I don't believe a word of what I've just heard from you.
No, I believe in
upset.
economic developments. I believe in the Inward Investor Programme. You were in favour of scuppering that, weren't you?
Yeah, and I'll tell you about, though, we will possibly ending up having to take a side between US and China. I mean, imagine the worst comes to the worst and the Chinese invade Taiwan. Are we going to say, oh, look, that's your problem, don't worry about that?
Well, so what are you sending body bags back from... No, I mean, like, the point is that we are a neutral country.
Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is this.
No, we're militarily neutral.
What was that movie, Pretty Woman? And, Richard Gere, lots of sucking up is required. I actually think we have a sweet spot between East and West where we can actually develop Chinese relationships, where they will fund our universities, where we will sell our infant formula, the best in the world, off of green grass. And we will actually have TikTok employing 5,000 people here. What's so wrong with that?
Are you not worried about
bread
TikTok?
And butter.
All over Europe, parliaments, we have our TikTok Taoiseach, and yet other governments are saying, don't allow TikTok on your phone.
This is like the old Reds under the bed. I mean, like, the fact of the matter...
You're very naive.
No.
You're very naive. You call yourself sort of the real world person who knows how the real world operates. No, you're a useful idiot for the Chinese.
So would you be in favour of a trade embargo with China? Like, how far will your principles extend?
I think we should de-escalate our dependence on China.
Well, on a more civil note, today is a day I want to just mark the passing of 2 people. I served in the Dáil for 22 years. Michael Darcy was a TD in Wexford and a minister and a senator and so on. And he actually was the TD before we got 3 seats with Everett and myself. And he led that charge, and fair play to him. And he's been buried today as we speak. And Bruce Arnold, who back in the 80s, when I was a humble backbencher, the humility's gone, you might have noticed. Every Saturday he had the kind of lead political column. And, I know he was castigated as a West Brit and that, but put it like this, I enjoyed his insight. And the other person I want to make reference to, who hasn't died, but will be next worst thing to that, is retiring from RTE, Brian Dobson. Dobbo is a great guy, and I always found him to be extremely, first like this, fair. I think, you know what I mean, and professional.
And a very good interviewer.
Yes.
And I don't know him particularly well. I know him and I like him. And we had children different years in the same primary school. So I would have met him at school events and stuff like that as well. I'll tell you a little story actually against myself in relation to it. My first TV job was as his replacement in RTE for a program called Marketplace back in 1991, 92. And he used to co-present it with Vincent Wall, and he was moved to the newsroom to read the news. And I was brought in to be Vincent's co-presenter on the programme. And to tell this little story against myself, I was, and this shows you how flahoolic things were in RTE. They gave me, and this is 1991, they gave me a clothing budget of £500 to properly attire myself.
Which Alien spent.
No, actually, no. You keep jumping in, you got it wrong. This was in the pre-Alien era. Okay. And my girlfriend of the time marched me into FX Kelly's on Grafton Street.
I thought that was a butcher's or something.
No, it was. I think that was the name of it anyway. In fact, actually, there were a couple of
Gents Outfitters.
Gents Outfitters, anyway.
Okay.
And I was given the 500.
Was 500 a lot of money in those days?
To me it was, Ivan. I know £500 is only a small bet to you, but it was a lot of money to me in 1992. Okay. And the idea from the producers was that I would get myself a couple of suits and a couple of shirts and a couple of ties that I would be able to wear.
Your taste in shirts is simply appalling.
Right.
These paisley yokes. Go on.
Anyway, this was in the pre-paisley days, but said girlfriend managed to spend the entire €500 on a single suit.
Okay.
£500 we're going back in this thing, right? And not only did she manage to spend the entire money on the one suit, it was oatmeal brown, double-breasted. And when they saw it on the set, they went, you cannot wear that under any circumstances.
It was too posh or what?
They just said it just doesn't work. The colour doesn't work. The look of it doesn't work. What the hell were you thinking?
So you needed another €500. you know what?
So I managed to, I was well suited. But anyway, sorry, the point, and I'll come to on this as well, is that as I often tell Aileen afterwards, that same year I would have been on one of these best dressed men lists, whatever and stuff, because of my stylish attire. And I said I met Aileen the following year, and I've never once appeared since because I've never been able to spend the money on clothes again since.
I never heard of a clothing budget from TV3, from News Talk.
Did you not get the clothing budget from TV3 when we did the Tonight Show together?
But can I just say this? When Owen Harris was advising, when he was advising Francis de Rossa, we were in government at the time, he said the first thing you do to be taken seriously is wear a €600 suit on television. You know, that could make you look more slick, more serious and so on, and it was money well spent. And if you notice, the Francis de Rossa was always very, very well dressed.
Okay, we will leave it there. We will, I promise, come back to your many emails that are coming into mail@pathtopowerpodcast.com. There's some great ideas emerging from it, so we might come back and do those in the next week or two in advance of the European Parliament elections. Please recommend us to a friend. If you like this, make sure that you follow us so that the next episode drops automatically to you. You can do that at Apple, Spotify, wherever it is you get your podcast, even if it's on YouTube where you look at us as well as listening to us. So please do that. And I hope you've enjoyed this. From me, Matt Cooper.
And from me, who learned a new word this week, FUBAR, Ivan Yates.
Thank you very much for being with us.